Welcome to I Said What I Said, a sports podcast giving you opinions not heard anywhere else. I'm your host, Brad Wakai, alongside my co-host, Tyson Gentry. Tyson, we're back, baby, back in the saddle to talk college football after a hiatus. If you haven't listened to our NFL one that we just did reacting to Week 12, we took a little bit of time for Thanksgiving. We hope everybody out there had a fantastic Thanksgiving. And Tyson, honestly, with the hell of a college football season that we've had betting, it was a great break.
It was fantastic. We actually ended up doing so much better with our picks when we didn't have to broadcast them, which hurts a little bit. But we're going to show you guys the PowerPoint from 2 weeks ago where we got our asses kicked, and not the ones where we're going to pretend we could slip something in there on you because we didn't tell you beforehand. But Brad, it's over. It's done. We've made it to the end. There's only really 3 more weeks of college football that we're going to lose insane amounts of money on, and then we'll lose little amounts in the playoff.
Yeah, exactly. So, like Tyson alluded to, we'll get to everything in Money Makin Time. And like again, he alluded to, we got college football conference championships this weekend. It's crazy. I can't believe it's here already. Like every single week, we're like, wow, man, it's week 6. I can't believe it. Like we're done. Like I'm wearing my Penn State shirt because they look good against Michigan State in the finale after they fired Mike Yurcich. Hey, I'm pumped up. I'm ready for the offseason. We got a bowl game, and that's it. Like, that's all we have left. It's crazy.
It's pretty nuts to start the year where you were, and now you're already on to the next one. What are they, 10th they're 10th right now in the last poll of the year. So it wasn't an objective failure like Brad might want to make it out to be.
No, it's just another 10-2 season, losing to Ohio State and Michigan. That's where the program is. But, this isn't a Penn State podcast. I won't bore the non-Nittany Lions fans out there with that. But, Tyson, before we get to college football conference previews of these championship games, we're going to preview the Big Five and then close with Money Makin Time. Let's get into the college football rankings. So we're going to react to that. And if you haven't seen it, number 1 is Georgia. After Michigan beat Ohio State in a crazy game, they've moved up to number 2. Washington is number 3. Florida State in there at number 4, despite the injury to Jordan Travis, as they're still 12-0. Then out of the one-loss teams, the committee has put Oregon at 5, Ohio State at 6, following their loss to Michigan. So they still have an outside chance to get into the college football playoff. Texas at 7 at 11-1, then Alabama at 8 at 11-1. So those are your teams. Like, they're going to have some things going on there. But Tyson, we were talking a little bit off air before we got on here, just because I wanted to gauge kind of your reaction to everything. What would you share with me that you want to share with the audience just about your thoughts on how the committee's ranked this?
Well, I agree with essentially the top 3. I think that's fine for where we're at in the season. You can rank them however you want. Once you're in, you're in. It doesn't matter. I understand Florida State's undefeated, and I get it. And if you go back and listen to our preseason shows, this is actually exactly where I thought they're going to be to end the year. I just thought Jordan Travis was going to be playing quarterback. That's kind of the issue I have with them being 4, and I understand – it's a college football playoff. It's what you've done on the field, and the injuries probably shouldn't factor into that a bunch. Brad, the committee's absolute worst nightmare they walked themselves directly into, because you got Oregon at 5. If they beat Washington, are they just sliding up to 3 now, or is Florida State going up? What's the deal going to be with that? It kind of shows you where they think the Big Ten ranks overall and what they thought of Ohio State, because that was a 1-possession loss, like on the road against your biggest rival. Other years, that team slides down 1 spot. Like that sometimes that's a swap between 2 and 3. They bump them all the way out, and now they don't have a chance to play to get in. And then what do you do with Texas and Alabama? If Alabama shows up and beats Georgia, they're going to jump Texas. Texas went to Tuscaloosa and beat Alabama earlier this season. I think it would have made more sense for the committee to kind of shuffle those rankings around, even if it wasn't necessarily what they believe, just to cover their own ass, because this is going to get real feisty real quick if it doesn't go exactly according to plan, and it's college football. It's not going to.
Yeah, I actually kind of commend the committee a little bit for not covering their ass, because I think in years past, Tyson, that's what we've seen, which I think is one of the reasons why we've been conditioned to be like, what's the committee doing? This is crazy. Like, what, this is going to be chaos. I think, honestly, if you're objectively looking at this, I think Oregon is a better team than Ohio State. And you talked about it, what do we think about Ohio State? Years past, they'd slide down a spot. Ohio State should have lost to Notre Dame. They should have lost Notre Dame flat out. So that's 1 loss there. If Penn State had a semblance in offense, and again, if and whatever, I'm just saying that to say Ohio State hasn't looked that dominant this year. Like, their defense has been awesome, their offense is not. And so when we're looking at this, I think Oregon is probably the best one-loss team out there.
They've been the
And
best team in
Alabama,
the country,
no.
period, for the last month and a half.
And I'm not sure they're not number 3, third best. I'm not even sure if they're not the second best,
Right.
to be
I think they
completely
might be the
honest.
best team in the country now.
And so I think when you're looking at this, and we'll get into scenarios in a little bit here, but I commend them for making these decisions where Texas is still over Alabama because they have to be because they beat them. But it brings up that point: is Alabama going to jump into the playoff by beating
Yes.
Georgia? Does Georgia
Yes.
get eliminated?
No.
There's like a whole can of worms that goes on here. So let's jump into scenarios, Tyson. And we'll go through the preview a little bit, but in terms of the actual college football playoff projections, you think Georgia's still in if they lose to Alabama?
Yeah, I do. And I think the reasoning from the committee, and you can fight with this if you want to, but Florida State looked real shaky against a 5-win Florida team for 55 minutes last Saturday. A Florida team that, can't hang with either one of these two. I think the committee, you can kind of mentally walk yourselves into, okay, we have a one-loss Alabama team who's turned it around and looked much better over the last 2 months since their loss to Texas. And then we have back-to-back national champions who their only loss would be in the SEC championship game against a team who, at the absolute worst, would be number 5, right? Like if Bama doesn't get in here. So that to me that's going to be the issue, because let's be honest, like Florida State is going to get jumped more than likely by at least somebody outside of the top 4 right now. And that could be Washington falling out if Oregon goes in and handles business kind of like everybody's expecting. We'll get into that line a little later. Personally, I think that Florida State's resume should kind of speak for itself here, but you got to brace yourself. They're going to at best be 4, and there's a real scenario this weekend where they find themselves on the outside looking in through no fault of their own.
And you think even if they go undefeated and are conference champion? Yeah. Oh man, I think that would be ridiculous.
Like
I know,
that's
but
going to be their reasoning.
But in the past, you have to reward conference champions. Like you can't go 13-0, beat the teams they have, and win the conference championship. Like the committee said that they want to prioritize, and then find a way for them to get out. Like that's where I push back on a lot of this stuff. Right, the money's going to come into it, but at some point there has to be other things in college football besides TV deals, contracts, and rewarding.
They just killed the Pac-12 for TV deals and money and all that.
The Pac-12 killed themselves because they were poorly run.
That's where the NCAA and college football in general is poorly run. Like they're going to go where the money is. That's part of the reason I was a little shocked that Ohio State fell to where they fell, because it's a huge national brand. And like Texas, if Texas comes out this weekend and hangs dog in the Big 12 championship game, then that case is going to get real loud. And it's just going to be a whole lot of stuff. The only way Florida State, I think, comfortably makes it in, if all this other stuff happens, is if they just go out and beat the brakes off Louisville. And I think that's a real scenario, because we're all, Florida State's dead. They don't have Jordan Travis. Florida State still has one now of the best receivers in the country. They got a fantastic running game. I still think probably the best college defensive end in football in Jared Verse. They have like blue chippers all across the field. If they go out and win this game by 20 points, there is no argument. If they look shaky like they did against Florida, now all of a sudden it's a big deal.
Yeah, I think if they still win, they're going to get in. Like, I think they'll be the 4th seed, and then the committee's going to have some real hand-wringing to do. I don't think Michigan's going to lose. I think if Georgia loses, there's a real chance they're not in it. If we're looking at things, Alabama, they'd be 12-1 as a conference champion. Texas, if they win, they'd be 12-1 as a conference champion. Michigan would be 13-0 as a conference champion, and Florida State would be 13-0 as a conference champion. If you want to prioritize winning conference championships, and that's what the committee said so far, you got to be able to brace that Georgia. Okay, yeah, we get you had a great 2 years. This is your only loss in 3 seasons, but this is about this year. This is about honoring and rewarding the teams that are performing this year. I honestly think there's a real shot they don't make it.
Well, it's interesting because there's not been a true best team at any point this season. Like there was no real week where it was like, outside of some Michigan games, to be honest, like Michigan was blowing the doors off people, and it was kind of like, well, maybe they're the best. But like Georgia never separated, and that's kind of at this point in the season when we talk about these scenarios. In the past, we've had a true number 1 and like a solidified number 2, things like that. This year, it's just kind of all over the board. Brad, if Oregon beats Washington on a last-second walk-off field goal, what happens then?
Oh my God, man! Well, Oregon would be in over Washington. But
does Washington fall out of the playoff for losing to a team that the committee respects but with the same point margin they played in 12. You know what I mean? Like it's going to get scary, and these are real life.
Yeah. I think they'd be out, man. Oh, I think
I think
Washington,
so
if they
too.
lose this game, they're out. Like,
I
I
think
think
so
that's where,
too.
like, we talked about it before. Like, committee was kind of poking it that way. You know, if you lose, you're out. And Oregon, you know, they have to go and win. Obviously, if they lose this 2 losses, they're done. But I think they're respecting the Pac-12 enough that they're going to say winner of this is in. That's at least my read on it.
And it should be. I think, you know, it's a hell of a year for the Pac-12 to go out on. You're going to have to get those West Coast fans at some point because you just lost them for a long time. Let's get that money while we can.
This would be a great year for a 12-team playoff because as we're discussing the top 8 teams, we're also having Missouri at 10-2, Penn State at 10-2, 9-10, Ole Miss at 10-2 at 11, and then Oklahoma at 10-2, the 12th seed. Just imagine those games. Some of these on campus, like these are national brands. Like I can't wait for the 12-team playoff. I know people are bitching and moaning about it. This is going to be fun.
Oh, it's going to be a blast. And that's one thing quickly. We're talking about that Georgia-Alabama matchup if Alabama wins. If I'm kind of maybe in the weeds here, reading the tea leaves, but the amount of SEC teams that they kind of just shoved into this thing, right? Like LSU is not the 13th best team in the country. Tennessee's not the 21st best team in the country. I don't know if Ole Miss is the 11th best team in the country or if Missouri's the 9th, but they kind of just shoved them all up the board. And so I'm looking at that saying, well, they clearly are giving this conference respect from prior years that it probably didn't earn this season. And that's going to be a talking point for them because if you win the conference with 7 teams in the top 15, even though those are the committee's rankings, their own thoughts, like that's going to play into this whole thing.
Okay, let's get into our conference championship previews here, Tyson. This is going to be a weekend where some wacky things happen. I already know that I have a lean on what I like on certain games. It's not going to turn out that way. We're going to get in the money making time later, but we're going to preview the 5 big conferences, the Power Fives, but I'll quickly run through the other ones. Conference USA features the 10-3 New Mexico State team against Liberty, who's 12-0. They are a complete wagon under Jamie Chadwell. Is anybody surprised? You shouldn't be. MAC features Miami, Ohio, facing Toledo, a 10-2 Miami team versus an 11-1 Toledo team. That's a big game. Boise State and UNLV in the Mountain West Championship. Can you believe Boise State's in this championship game after firing their head coach? It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
This is what David Tepper was hoping happens to the Carolina
Panthers. SMU Tulane in the American Athletic Championship. Now, Preston Stone, the quarterback for SMU, out, and Tulane hasn't looked that good this season yet. They're still 11-1. The Sun Belt features App State, who many people thought quit on the season midway through. Now they're 8-4 and playing Troy, who's 10-2. So some fun group of 5 games this week in Tyson. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, and I'm a little bit upset with App State right now for the way they did our boys, JMU there. That was not I mean, it's what they do. Brad, we kind of got all the way through this thing. I know we were gone for a minute, but let's table this current discussion for a second. What do you think about Elko and Texas A&M?
I think it's a great hire. I think he's gonna be awesome there. What do you think?
How much? Why? Like, I love it. I think Elko right away. That was the first name that popped in my head. I don't know necessarily. I don't agree with the Stoops hate that came out of this entire thing with Texas A&M. Like the fact that now he's a bum coach because Texas A&M tried to hire him. But I think Elko's not going to turn it around either. Like that's the if you're a Texas A&M fan listening to this, I want you to pay very close attention because Mike Elko just joined the cult. That's all that happened. You're going to hold hands and sing songs at the press conference. That's not a winning. Whatever. We'll save the Texas A&M stuff for another day. But we hadn't got a chance to talk about that. And I thought the Elko move and the Stoops move both would have been good hires. I thought there was a lot of people like Ryan Day was never showing up at calls.
No, unfortunately for me. But it is what it is. But Tyson, I got to say, too, as we kind of get back on track here for the championship preview, we're college football sickos. We love having the laptops up and the multiple screens. But I got to say, man, I'm excited to sit down and just kind of have 2 games or 3 games going on for different windows. I mean, we got the 2 games on Friday, the Conference USA and the Pac-12 going on Friday night. And then Saturday, it's like an afternoon affair into the evening when you get the climax of the Big Ten championship and the ACC. I'm looking forward to just sitting down and watching a few games at a time.
And I like the way that they snuck the Boise State UNLV game in there at the 3 o'clock window for you, 1 o'clock for me, because it's going to be the only thing, in the fourth quarter. It's going to get that entire little sliver of our attention. So I thought that was a nice little shout to some of these smaller conferences, because nobody's tuning in to some of these games, man. These kids are amazing. Like, these are NFL players. So if you want to start early.
Okay, let's get into it now. Let's start with the Big 12. Now, Texas is facing Oklahoma State. I can't believe we're even at this point in time that Oklahoma State is in the Big 12 championship game based on how they started. Yet, they have a chance to play major spoil here against a Texas team who we've seen come up small in big moments with Sarkisian and Quinn Ewers. What are you expecting out of this one? Because Oklahoma State wants to be explosive. They want to, have a big explosive plays because they give up so many on the other side. What do you think Texas is going to do in this one as all the pressure is on them?
Well, you said it, it's the explosive plays, like limiting. It's so stupid. Like, it's so funny. We all spend all this time, and then it just comes back to the same tenets of football always. And it's just limit explosive, get explosive yourself. Sark has done such a fantastic job the last couple of years of scheming up this run game. And then it's Brooks, right?
Yep.
Yeah, Jonathan Brooks.
Mm-hmm.
He's done. Which is a huge, huge blow to Texas. And I think, for as much, if we're going to make this big of a deal, and I'm one of the people, so I'm kind of hitting myself on the back. If the Jordan Travis injury matters as much as it does to Florida State, the Jonathan Brooks injury to Texas is freaking huge. And I know that they're going to turn out, they got a couple other very capable backs right now, but he was the engine in that offense. That's what makes everything easy. And I think that this matchup specifically is perfect for this version of the Texas team, because Quinn Ewers is just going to throw moonballs, and he's going to let it fly, and they're going to be able to pick up huge plays, whether it's X or whoever. They're loaded, man, and Oklahoma State's defense just can't keep up, and Oklahoma State's offense for 6 weeks there, we were all in, and then they showed us who they really were to end the season.
Yeah, I think the only thing that can happen here is with Oklahoma State playing with house money. They go out, they're relaxed. Texas comes in super tight, and they Texas, and they play down to the competition just like they did in that Kansas State game. They get tight, and everything, all the demons from the Texas big games in the past comes back and bites them. If Oklahoma State can get things going, because we look at Texas, their line's very dominant. They can give up some big plays in the secondary. And Bowman, if he's able to get time and go out and sling it and just say F it and play ball, and they're able to put together some explosive plays, Tyson, this could be an upset alert for Texas. No, I don't expect that to happen. I don't.
Noon.
Texas is too good. Oh, man.
If it starts the day with a noon upset, we know we are in for a roller coaster.
Let's move to the ACC, where the aforementioned Florida State Seminoles without Jordan Travis are facing Louisville, 10-2 Louisville in Jeff Brohm's first season. I can't believe I'm saying this, but Jack Plummer is playing in a conference championship game. He had been, I think, 0 of 7 or had not beaten a top 25 team in previously in his career, or maybe it was top 10, something like that. But he has an opportunity to do that here against Florida State and play major spoiler. Whew. Here's my question. Florida State looked bad against Florida, but Florida has SEC dudes up front, and they're able to disrupt some certain things, but their offense wasn't good enough to test Florida State. On the flip side, Louisville's offense is really good. They can give Florida State's defense a scare. I'm not so sure about their defense. So for me, it comes down to, is it the offense for Florida State going to be able to insert their will now against a smaller front that Louisville has? Or are they still going to have those struggles, and yet their defense is going to be stressed more? That's what I'm kind of racking my brain on here.
Well, both those things I think are really good questions going into this game, but it's big game Braun, baby. That's the biggest thing to me is we know he's had smaller teams. He's the entire time he was pulling upset alerts, and it was fun, and it's featured on Fox on Big Ten.
Right.
It's still a thing we think of with those Purdue teams. They were smaller. They weren't as electric on offense. I don't even really understand what the hell's going on in Louisville. I watch it every week, and I'm
crazy.
I'm holding on to my priors from before the season. I'm like, this guy stinks, and then he's won, nonstop here. Dude, they're live. They're live as it gets. I think they are the most live upset team, because I wouldn't necessarily call Alabama over Georgia an upset, and the books would tell you that Washington, if them beating Oregon, would be an upset. So I struggle to call either one of those. I think that this would be huge for the the college football playoff, obviously, but I think it'd be huge for Louisville too. I want Florida State to win this game, but I think that Louisville has a real shot at coming out here and just bomb. Like, let's just go put up 100 points.
I think Louisville's live as well, man. I really do. And they're down to 2.5. They're under that field goal. I think a lot of it has to do with the quarterback. Dude, I just have a feeling, and you said it's the big game Brom thing, but I don't know if Florida State's defense has been tested against an offense like they're going to face against Louisville, at least in the past few weeks. Like Miami and Florida, really?
Week 1 was a long time ago.
It was a long time. And Clemson, like we thought they were going to be so good. And even their offense, like at times it looked explosive, but we've seen what they turned into. This is a different beast. This is a different animal here. And it's in Charlotte, North Carolina. So you're getting a little bit further away from Tallahassee. They're still going to travel. They're still going to have fans. I think it's going to be split here. But Louisville, man, we see when they go out for basketball games, they got a fan base. I mean, this is the biggest game in their program in a long time. So I think it's going to be packed in Charlotte. Louisville's live. I agree with you. What about the Big Ten? You putting any stock into Iowa here? We saw this rematch last year, this matchup last year. I mean, basically the same situation, right? Iowa kind of luck boxes into another Big Ten appearance because they play in the West. I can't wait for that to get disintegrated. And Michigan, coming off a huge win over their rivals against Ohio State, have to turn around and then play in the Big Ten championship game. I think if Michigan loses this week, they'll still be in, but I think you don't want to lose to Iowa here. For sure. So it's kind of a similar situation as last year, and Michigan pounded Iowa. So what are you expecting from this one? Similar or something different?
I think if Michigan lost this game, there's a chance, based on the way everything else unfolds, they could be the ones. I mean, there's the committee in college football in general still kind of holding on to a bit of these sign stealing stuff here. They would not hesitate to punish those guys and put them at 5. Good news for them is that's not going to happen. There's just there's a million different ways this game could play out, and Michigan wins 999,999. They're just better. Like, Iowa's defense is awesome, and then you can compare them to Penn State's defense, and you can compare them to Ohio State's defense and Michigan's defense. Michigan's seen defense is better than this Iowa defense. The numbers are crazy. Don't get me wrong. The players aren't. Like, there are NFL players on this Iowa defense. There's 11 of them at Penn State. There's 11 of them at Ohio State. Michigan is just going to run the ball. They're going to score enough points to win the football game. They're probably going to bust a couple loose. They might throw it 4 times in the second half, and they're going to win by 2 scores.
I'll have a play in this game in Money Making Time. So let's move on to, I think, the second biggest game, if maybe even the biggest game of the weekend in the Pac-12, because it's a rematch between Oregon and Washington that we saw Washington win the first one at home. Now, this is in Las Vegas. Huge point spread. I mean, the odds makers are telling you Oregon's 9.5 points better than Washington. That seems crazy. Now, Tyson, there's some speculation that Michael Penix is sick for Washington or not feeling well. Yeah, I mean, he hasn't been playing well. Like, there's something going on there. That could be baked into the line. Here's what I know. Oregon's offense is going to be able to score at will on the corpse of this Washington defense. Like, in the beginning of the season, that was what people were concerned about. And it was like, oh, no, they're actually performing better. Now they've gone back to, that's the Washington defense we expected, because they are getting smoked by teams that have no business hanging around in games with them. And that's not a good sign when your offense is not clicking in the way that it was earlier in the year as well. I think Oregon's going to win this game, man. Now, is it going to be as big? I'm going to save that for Money Making Time. I think you have a play in as well. But I think Oregon, like we said off the top in the CFB conversation, I think Oregon's one of the top 3 teams in the country, and I think they prove it this weekend.
I think they're the best team in the country. Like, I think that's not, that bold of a take at this moment. In the first game, and look, man, we cashed some Washington tickets this year. We're happy to be Huskies. Oregon didn't make plays in big moments once. It didn't feel like in that first game, right? Like, there are Dan Lanning, going for it, and I appreciate him sticking to his guns and doing it again. But when that doesn't work, it opens up huge doors. And that was kind of the turning point there for that Washington offense. That was the last one. There were moments in that game. I guess this end around Rome Odunze against Washington State on Saturday, or whatever that game was pretty crazy. That was, okay, we're creative again. But then Washington kind of just like turtled up to end the season here. And it was, we're going to take shot plays when we need to, but we're just kind of going to, let's play not to lose. Let's go undefeated here, and we'll try to see him again. If Oregon wins one of those moments, it's a wrap, because then the floodgates open, because Washington can't tackle. That's the biggest issue. That's the biggest difference between them and pretty much everyone else inside of really the top 10. I think, Washington's a fantastic story. They're undefeated. They're really good. I'm curious what the line would be in a game with them versus Ole Miss, let's say, or them versus Alabama, right? Like, they're not a paper tiger because they've shown up and they beat these guys already, but they are by far the most gettable of any of those teams in the top 5. Healthy.
SEC. I can't wait for this game. Georgia versus Alabama. The mentor versus the mentee. The mentor is now on the back foot against the mentee, right? The SEC is owned by Georgia. SEC is owned by Georgia. And it didn't look like Alabama had a shot to get here. After they looked so bad at the beginning, they lost to Texas. They couldn't block. They couldn't do anything. Yet Jalen Milroe has emerged as a real weapon at quarterback. It feels like they found their mojo. And this reminds me of an Alabama team that we've seen in the past, right? It's like, oh, all the hype coming in for certain Alabama teams. It's actually the one that you don't think about. That's the one who goes on and does great things. To me, Alabama's live. They're my favorite underdog of the weekend in these Power 5 conferences for sure. I'll put it right now. I think Alabama wins this game outright. Carson Beck's been awesome. Georgia's been flirting with some disaster. And listen, it's great when Kirby does the motivational thing, like, okay, and this and that, they think we're not better than us. And Georgia goes out there and just rolls them because they have more 5 stars. You're looking in the mirror in this one. And Alabama's hungry, and they're ready to go. I like Alabama in this game. I'll have a play in this in Money Making Time, as I just suggested. But I think Alabama is live to win this one and really shake things up.
Before the season, I said this Alabama team is closer to like the A.J. McCarron type, those team builds than we've seen. And Brad, one thing I didn't really factor in is some of those seasons, they weren't the best team in the SEC in the regular season. And there were guys that were skating by and getting to the SEC championship game undefeated on some fantastic moments throughout the year. But eventually you always got to pay the piper. And he just shows up. And I think that's what this Alabama team is. This is not, again, like you can't go back too far, but it's like they're going to make less mistakes. And that's the hallmark of the really good Alabama football teams. They lost to Texas because they didn't know who they were yet. I think that if that rematch happens tomorrow, we're going to get a far different outcome. Not to take anything away from that Texas win, but Alabama, I think, has grown the most of any team in the country this season. And I don't know if it's particularly that close, at least at the top. This team is – you don't just convert 4th and goal from the 31-yard line to show up in the SEC championship game and lose, man. This is college football. This is how this works. They are rolling right now.
And it feels like they have all the mojo, man. Like, that would have killed them, honestly. Yep. And we've seen it, dude. Like, at teams past Alabama, how many times have they come close? And they get their 2nd live, their 9th live, whatever it is, and then all of a sudden they take advantage of it. Like, that's what good programs do. That's what good coaches do. And they have an opportunity, a big opportunity this weekend. And I think they're ready for it. I'm pumped, man. I can't wait for this one.
I mean, we say it all the time, but we've seen this movie before.
All right, well, that's going to do it for our preview. Tyson, let's get into Money Making Time now. And we've been off for a little bit, but we don't shy away from anything here, folks. We've had a tough season. You know how it goes, but let's jump into it. Our Week 11 recap. Yes, that long ago, I went 5-4. We're not going to bitch and moan because you guys probably had some bad beats as well, but was happy to get home the Georgia 2-unit team total over. Kansas State absolutely dominated. Baylor, Utah 9.5 against Washington. Definitely like that play. Got home. UCF at the bounce house. Come on, don't play with the bounce house in big spots. They pounded Oklahoma State. Or I'm sorry, they pounded Oklahoma State. Washington State, California, rocking chair over. That was easy. Florida, South Florida -6.5. Tulane -22.5. We're dominant early. That just didn't get home for me. How about Missouri scoring like 43 points and Tennessee scoring single digits? Thanks, guys. Thanks for showing up. And then Oregon -13.5. I thought against a dead USC team. I guess it was Lincoln Riley's last stand. And Oregon just got scored I think one by 9 or 11. I can't remember now. But 5-4, up 1.51 units on the week, which we will take for sure.
Lincoln Riley's last stand sounds like the worst Western movie of all time. I went 2-3 in Week 11. I don't really even remember what happened in most of these games. That recall was super impressive by Brad there. The Missouri money line got home. You mentioned that one. James Madison got in right before everything went bad. I believe that was the Utah-Washington game, and Utah loses there. The Oklahoma State-UCF game, that was as soon as I got back on board with Oklahoma State, and they didn't get off the bus. And then Kansas -3.5. I don't know how many different ways this team can break my heart this season, but they've turned the ball over in so many unique ways whenever I have money on them.
So Tyson down 1.11 units on the season. So as a total here, I was down 14.24 on the season. Not great. Tyson down 7.34. Better than me. As a podcast, we're down 21.59 units. Just our legitimate worst imaginable college football betting season that we could have had, which is unfortunate, right? Because we had a good season last year. We keep saying it. Nobody cares. It's what you do for us this year. So it was disappointing, but we got to turn the page.
That if you're in our chalkboard, which I'll plug here at the end, you had a really good end to your college football season, trailing those picks, and we're not going to count those in the total because that wasn't part of the show. So just know that in that group that I'll plug at the end there, we made you back a little bit of money to end the season after we were robbing you blind to start.
Unless you faded us, then you're probably like, yes, keep it coming.
Congratulations.
All right, Tyson, let's get into it. Let's start putting in our bets for championship weekend. And I'm going to start off with Conference USA. New Mexico State Liberty over 56.5. Now, the reason why I like this one, and it's on 7 o'clock Eastern, CBS Sports Net, I love this Liberty offense. Absolutely love what Caden Saunders does. And on the flip side, I love this New Mexico State offense. Diego Pavia, he can get up and down. Now, he's a little bit banged up, which makes me nervous. But I think this has shootout potential all over it. Liberty does have a pretty solid defense. I'm going to be a little concerned that the ball stays on the field a lot because both teams like to run. And without the clock stopping in college football after every first down, you can run into a little bit of trouble here. But I just think there's explosive play after explosive play written all over these two teams. And in a championship game, I think we're going to see a lot. Give me over 56.5 in Lynchburg, Virginia. Liberty has home field advantage there.
How high do they climb if they go undefeated? Like, what's the max out here?
I think
23 right now,
17, 18.
Something like that, yeah.
No. I'll give it my other one here, Tyson, because I have 8 and you have 4. This is my maybe my favorite play of the weekend. I got to go Oregon -9.5. On a neutral field, they have all the momentum in the world. You know, Dan Lanning is going to have these guys foaming at the mouth, just like rabid dogs ready to play this one. Give me Oregon. Big here. I think they want to make a statement. They want to make sure that they're in the college football playoff with a dominant victory over the number 3 team in the country. They're going to do that. Give me Oregon -9.5.
I love Dan Lanning. I think Dan Lanning is coach of the year. I don't know what those odds are, who's going to actually get it, but give me Dan Lanning 7 days out of the week. Brad, my first play here, look, principal play, man. Texas -14.5. They have to. I think that they're going to roll this week, and I think that offense is going to fly. I'm so nervous. It's like when you bet on the Chargers, man. It's like, are they going to do this again? Is Sam Ellinger going to throw 4 interceptions? Are they going to have untimely turnovers that defense not going to be able to stop a running nose? I think, Brad, you were saying there's a lot of pressure on Texas this week. The reason I like them at -14.5, they're going early. The pressure is almost off. If they were playing after Washington had lost and Florida State had lost and Georgia and Alabama were locked into a massive game tied in the fourth quarter or something, and that goes on at the stadium, Texas is losing that game. They're going first. I think pressure's off. That's
an interesting way to look at it for sure. I like Texas in this game. For 14.5, that just scares me. So, Tyson, I'm going to go over 54.5 here. I legitimately think Texas might be able to score 40 on this defense. And Oklahoma State's going to be able to do enough funky things and get Texas in enough bad spots where they've given up points in the past, where I think this could fly over the total. So I'm with you. I like Texas big. I'm going to be rooting for that. We both have futures on them. So over 54.5 is the play for me in the Big 12 championship game. Tyson, I got to go back to the group of 5 guys. We got to get some action here, baby. Let's go Toledo -7.5 against Miami of Ohio. The hook, God, I hate playing it, but when I looked at it, if I want to get it down under a touchdown, it's -154. So I'm going to take a shot here. I think Toledo's a better team. Daquan Finn is a complete baller.
for Toledo. And Miami of Ohio, they're dealing with some quarterback injuries and some issues. Didn't quite catch up to them during the regular season of the MAC. This is a different beast. I mean, Toledo, well coached. They run the football extremely well. I think they're going to have a field day against this Miami, Ohio team in Detroit, Michigan, in a dome that plays to the strengths of what Toledo wants to do, throwing the ball through the air, getting explosive plays on the ground. So I'm going with the boys from Toledo on this one.
I have a play here, Brad, that I don't love, but it feels necessary because I don't know how many times we're going to be able to do this going forward here in the future. I don't know what it looks like for the Iowa Hawkeyes going forward. Under 6.5 total points for the Iowa Hawkeyes, plus 100. When is the next time in a conference championship game we're going to get somebody under a touchdown, man? And let's be honest. This is like they're going to cross the 50 6 times in this game. Like that's my guess. That's a high end number, I think, unless there's a huge return or the defense does something crazy, forces a turnover. That's what I'm really nervous about. Is it if I'm nervous about Iowa's defense scoring a touchdown, I'm going to find a book where I can place that bet, and I'm just going to ride between these two because this offense isn't getting to the end zone.
I can't believe it's set at this, Tyson. I mean, it's actually hilarious.
It's so gross.
The only thing that concerns me about this, I mean, it's a comedy play, so I might play it with you just because, like, I hate Iowa. And just the fact that they've been in so many conference championship games because they've been gifted that Western Division just infuriates me. But they had some weird. They always have some weird voodoo. Like I could just picture like a blocked punt or like some insane thing, or like JJ McCarthy fumbles and it hits off his lineman's helmet and it just randomly falls into one of the Iowa defender's hands. They run like God, that would make me puke.
Some white guy,
right? It's just classic. So I may play this with you as well, just to be on it, because screw Iowa. Who cares?
That's what I'm saying.
I'm staying with my group of fives, Tyson. I hope you're on this with me. They've let us down, but Tulane money line. So I just got to do it, man. This line seems so short to me. So short. Now I'm scared they're going to break my heart again. They've broken both of our hearts multiple times. I don't want to play the 3.5. I'm just going to take them to win. I think they're a better team than SMU. Their defense is much better, and SMU's defense is not good. My concern is Tulane's offense now, which we would not say last season. So I think with the backup QB, Tulane's going to be able to have the ball more and be able to utilize their offense and potentially score more points. So I'm going to lay the minus 160. Just go out and win the football game, Tulane. Come on, do it for us at the end of the year.
Like the first money line play we've had on Tulane all year, to be fair. I was shaking my head, and then I was thinking about it. I was like, we always take them in the points, and that's where we lose.
Going back to points, I'm taking App State, or Appalachian as the graphic says here, but I'm taking App State plus 5.5 against Troy. It's basically I'm taking a market play here. 6.5 down to 5.5. Sharps are on App State. They played much better down the stretch. Troy, their metrics, their numbers look good. The record looks good. Dive into it a little bit based on what I just looked like, kind of half-ass looked into before this, as I wanted to see. Really? Apparently, it's a little fugazi over there at Troy. So I'm going to take App State, the hot team. They're actually bought back into this on a neutral field with a chance to actually salvage something out of this season. So I'll take App State with the points, plus 5.5.
I'm going here, Brad. I think that you might follow me. I don't know this. I'm going to Alabama money line at plus 180. And this isn't, again, like I don't know if Alabama's going to get in the playoff. I don't think that this team is probably going to win the national championship. But I think they're going to be ready to play this game. And I think that that's what the message in that locker room, and I know it's a message in that Georgia locker room too, but sometimes we get so wrapped up in looking ahead, and then we think these teams are doing it too. Like, this is Nick Saban, man. This offense has found stuff that works, and this defense has kind of transformed from, like, this is the Bama defense this year, this is what we have going on, to, oh, there's a timing play. Oh, Bama they forced a punt, now they get the ball back. Like, they're just going to, again, I think they're just going to win moments. I think they're just going to be a little bit better prepared. And to be honest, Brad, I think Georgia's too high strung. Like, I think that's a little bit of what we're seeing. Like, there were times in that Georgia Tech game last weekend where it was like, okay, we can breathe. Like, they're going to start rolling here. And it was just like little, just mental mistakes or like a missed tackle in the open field, things that you're not used to seeing. And I think it's because they're, for the first time in 3 years, it almost feels like instead of chasing perfection, they're trying to protect it.
That's an interesting look. And Tyson, I'm with you not on the money line, though. I'm going to take the points plus 6.5. I think it was going to be a sprinkle. Now I know that you're on it. I'll play it. But my official play here is going to be Alabama plus 6.5. All the points you said. It's Nick Saban. He's hungry. He's tired of hearing about how this is not his conference anymore. And if he does retire, he wants to go out on top. He doesn't want to go out as a punk. Like, I don't know if this is last year or not. The coaching job that he's done with this group of guys has been impressive. It feels like he still has more in the tank, just based on what we saw this season. So I'm going to go Alabama, man. I think they're going to win the game. I'm going to take the points insurance just in case Georgia something funky happens as an official play. But Tyson and I both like Alabama in the SEC championship game. And the closing out things out for me, Michigan minus 22.5. I know what you're going to hear. That's just so many points to lay in a conference championship game against a defense of this caliber of Iowa. It doesn't matter if your offense can't move the football. And if you give Michigan more opportunities with the ball, they're going to score points. Like, remember when Iowa's defense was on the field a million times against Penn State? They got boat raced 31-0. And Michigan's offense is better than Penn State's. So I think that can happen in this game here. So we saw it last year. Michigan, once they get it rolling, they're going to get it rolling in Iowa. There's not much they can do to keep up in a shootout. I like Michigan laying the points here.
I was going back and forth on that one, and I just decided I had to do the Iowa under 6.5. I think Michigan hits this number as well. I just think Iowa has, they tricked you guys a little bit out, like in the college football polls. Like, there's no reason to me ever that this team should be cracking the rankings that they seem to get awarded to them because we overrated whoever in that Big Ten West to start the year. Like, oh, they beat Wisconsin. Well, it turns out Wisconsin wasn't as good as you know what I mean? Like, you can run through. They're padded, man. My play of the week here, Brad, I'm going a little off the wall. I didn't love a lot of the numbers here on the FBS side of things, so I'm going with the Montana Grizzlies to win by 14 or more points here against Delaware. It is minus 190. You can take them on the spread at minus 17.5. This Grizzly team has allowed 24 points in their last 4 games. They have played ranked teams each of those last 4 games. They just beat their in-state rival 37-7. Eli Gilman is the best freshman running back in the country in the FCS level. He will be playing for some, I was going to say Pac-12, but that's not going to exist. Some school is going to be paying him money. Clifton McDowell is undefeated as a starter. This Grizzly defense is unreal. Delaware is starting a true freshman quarterback, the third-string quarterback who, looked good and got a win. But for those of you that don't watch the FCS, this week is massive. We have the Grizz in Delaware. There's a North Dakota State versus Montana State game going on that I think honestly might be a higher quality of football than you're going to get from the Iowa offense. So if you get bored, go ahead and switch over to the FCS playoffs. And
it's minus 190. Did I get that in right for you?
You did.
Love that. So blow out Delaware. Penn State played Delaware earlier in the season as well. So we get Tyson. I got a little overlap.
I got to give back some of the money that they gave me last or 2 weeks ago. So I feel like this is just me repaying the Bucks.
All right. Well, that's going to do it, Tyson. Man, I can't believe it. We got bowl season coming up. We don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves here. We have this weekend that we need to attack. I think I'm going to have some more plays, to be completely honest with everybody. I think when team totals get officially set, I'm going to be playing that. So, Tyson, tell everybody where they can find us.
This is in the Chalkboard app. It's in the App Store, Google Play, wherever you download your apps. The group name is the Roundtable Bets presents. ISWIS presents the Roundtable Bets. Dude, I cannot believe it. I'm looking at this thing 5 times a day. I get notifications on my phone where it says what it is right at the top, and I'm too dumb to remember. The ISWIS presents the Roundtable Bets. Type it in. It's free. We'll let you write in. And like Brad said, there's going to be more play in there as the week goes on because, like, he's over there in Brooklyn right now, and some of these things aren't even open for him to be betting. Like, there are team totals and things that haven't opened up for us that we're going to throw down in there. So hop in and let us know who you're trailing and why you like Washington minus 3.5.
In the meantime, like, subscribe, and share the show. If you haven't already and you're watching on YouTube, go ahead and smash that like button on the way out. We appreciate the support. And again, if you haven't rated and reviewed us on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, go ahead and send us in a 5-star review. It really helps us become more discoverable in the algorithm or however it works on the back end from those conglomerates. And we really appreciate it when you guys listen. We do, like, from the bottom of our heart. We knew Spotify Wrapped is doing their whole annual most listened to and everything. So we've gotten a couple people send us some stuff in, and we appreciate it. Like we do. So if you're listening now and you want to send it to us, you can do it on social media, X, Instagram, TikTok, whatever platform you're on. It's at ISWIS_pod. Okay. So this is what's going to happen. We'll be back next week. So what we're going to do, we're going to put a bow on the college football season. After the championship games, we'll react to that. We'll talk about some of the bets we had, all of that good stuff. We'll kind of project who we think is going to be in the CFB. Actually, they'll come out with final rankings, I believe, because bowl season, all that. So we'll talk about that. We'll get that going. Following week, we're going to start doing bowl stuff. So we're going to do it every single time as we've been doing it throughout the season, giving you upcoming bowl games and things like that, picks and all the good stuff. So make sure to stay tuned for us. Subscribe if you haven't already so you don't miss anything on that front. We'll be back with you next week. If you're an NFL fan, we're coming out with more content later this week as well. So we'll talk to y'all soon. Till then, guys, peace.